Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So what is the advantage of hearing about Krishna? One advantage of hearing about Krishna is that it prevents you from hearing about other things. It's too cold to wear a garland. Did you record the class in the park last week?
It's a New Year's release.
I need to get a copy. Is there a way you can give me a copy?
I can copy it in my laptop. I can.
SD card or?
I copied that data on my recorded to my laptop. In the laptop I have it.
And then what? How do I get it?
I can do it.
Okay. So when you're, even if you think, well, that hearing about Krishna is not doing a lot, by hearing about Krishna you're not hearing about Maya. So that's one thing it does. Prevents you from hearing about Maya, right? Keeps you out of trouble, right? At least while you're hearing, you're out of trouble. And Srila Prabhupada said, while you're hearing, you're actually situated in the mode of goodness while you're hearing. So, that's also good, right? What to speak of the purification you get, but at least while you're hearing, you're in the mode of goodness. So everything is, while you stay in this room and hear, everything's good. When you leave, who knows what will happen. But while you're hearing, then everything's good. We need a translator. You need a machine that translates English into Russian.
My friend can another doctor from which is
Hare Krishna.
come back now.
He wanted to come back to Mayapur.
I come back to the work. It's at 9 in Calcutta.
Well, you have to leave now?
I don't think I have to see him.
Okay. So, we'll see you. He's leaving now?
He's from Andhra Pradesh.
Oh, okay.
Working there in emergency medicines and we have no Tibet.
As what?
He's working there in emergency medicine.
Emergency physician.
You're a what?
Emergency physician.
Oh, emergency, yeah.
No.
You see a lot of suffering, right?
Yeah, it's last time he had a heart surgery, just like so. It's like,
You had heart surgery?
yeah,
Oh,
33 years old.
Hare Krishna. Too young for heart surgery.
Yes, he's 5 years young. Will we come back again?
Yeah, we'll see you when you come back. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Shri Sri Radha Damodar ki jai. Ah. So we were talking about how Krishna loves his devotees. And all the emphasis, of course, in Shastra is on how we should love Krishna, because you don't have to teach Krishna to love us, you have to teach us to love him. So that's why that's why the emphasis is in Shastra and on us loving Krishna, not so much on Krishna loving us. There's more emphasis on us loving Krishna, because he already loves us. Right? You believe that? Krishna loves us even though we don't deserve it. Yes? But as long as we're willing to try, he'll allow us to serve him through the spiritual master. Yes?
But love is not the thing you should deserve. It's like, no.
Yeah. Qualify yourself, yeah. Well, a nice way to think about it is that love of Krishna is who we are. What this conditioned nature we're in is not who we are, but we've had it so for so long it seems like who we are. So to think about love of Krishna might seem distant or even foreign, but it's who we are. It's just normal. If you've been sick for a long time, you can't imagine being healthy. So that all we're doing, all Krishna consciousness is doing, is getting out everything that's in the way of loving Krishna. If loving Krishna is there's just things in the way. It's like, well, these boxes are piled up against a door, and inside the door you have all your valuables. So you have to move everything out of the way, then you can open the door. So there's all these things in the way. That's all we're doing, just moving things out of the way. It's not like we're creating love of Krishna. That's already there. We're just getting everything out of the way. And when everything's out of the way, the love is there. That's all. So, it's natural. Not artificial. Raj Kishore, what should be a mood in Vrindavan? The mood of Vrindavan is, if you go to Vrindavan, the mood is exact opposite of when you go to New York. When you go to New York, the mood is, it's all about me. That's why people go to New York. You know that? From all over America, people move to New York to become successful. So the mood is, become successful, it's all about me. The mood of Vrindavan is, it's all about Krishna. And if you go to Vrindavan and you don't think that way, you can't stay. You'll go crazy. You'll go absolutely nuts. Because Vrindavan is only about Krishna, it's not about us. Not at all about us. Not even a little about us. It's only about Krishna. And that's the mood of Vrindavan. So we're talking about Krishna's love. Krishna is not unresponsive to his devotees' love. And the flow of love is not unidirectional. Krishna responds to love, and so the flow of love is reciprocal. Are any of those windows open? Can you, if they are, can you close them? It's never quiet here, is it? It's either a truck or a hammer, isn't it? Wherever you go, there's a truck or a hammer or a horn.
Or the jackals.
Or jackals.
Or this physical.
It's just with that knocking that when you hear the recording in the back, you'll just hear knocking, knocking, knocking. The flow of love is reciprocal. In the way that it flows from devotee to Krishna, it also flows from Krishna to his devotee. The Lord assures Arjuna that he is forthcoming to every show of devotion. Ye tamam prapajante. Tam stadaivi vajamyaham. As you approach me, I approach you. As you don't approach me, I don't approach you. Was there a song by, what's his name, Phil Collins? Call My Name, I'll Be There, or some song like that? Is there? Nobody wants to, I never listened to that music because I became a devotee in 1970, but sometimes when we did Sankirtan, we would hear all these songs. Anyway, I'm sure there's a song that says, call my name and I'll be there. Isn't there? It has to be. If there isn't, then Sulalita will write it. But anyway, so I've often said that Mahamaya and Yogamaya is the same person. The exact same person. And how you want to deal with that person is how that person will deal with you. So if you want Krishna, then you get Yogamaya. If you don't want Krishna, you get Mahamaya. So Mahamaya is just coming because you called her name. Now you may not think you called her name, but indirectly you've called her name. You say, no, I didn't call the name Mahamaya. Well, what did you call? When you're thinking about something other than Krishna, that means you're calling Maya. Prabhupada said, they were talking in a morning walk about being under control. Because we talk about being controlled by our senses and the modes of nature. So there's this idea, when I'm transcendental to the modes of nature, I'm not under control. And Prabhupada said it's not true. You are under control. You're just under control of superior nature, Chit Shakti, Swarup Shakti. But we're always under control. There's never a time when you go, nothing controls me. It might seem like that if you control your senses. Right? I'm controlling my senses, so it doesn't seem like anything can control me. But ultimately, the only way you can control your senses is if you're controlled by the superior energy. Right? So we're always under control. So it's not haphazard how we're controlled. We desire it. Maybe we're not aware of it, but then Maya reciprocates as Yoga Maya or Mahamaya. Yes? Sometimes you say Maya is strong. Have you ever said that? Raise your hand if you ever said Maya is strong. Is Maya strong for the pure devotee? Yes or no? Go ahead.
Yes and no.
Yes. She is strong, but the pure devotee is not disturbed.
Oh. Maybe.
Yes. Because it's Yogamaya, which is strong.
Yes, Yogamaya, but Mahamaya. Although Prabhupada said Maya tried to stop him by getting him sick because she couldn't stop him any other way. So he saw it like that. So you could see it that way. But in terms of enjoying the material world, she had no business with Prabhupada. So for Prabhupada, he would never say Maya is strong. For us, he would say, but for himself, no. And for us, he said, Maya is only as strong as your desire to be Krishna conscious is weak. So you look at it on the scale. Here's Maya, here's Krishna consciousness. Your desire to be Krishna conscious goes up, Maya goes down. Your desire not to be Krishna conscious goes down, Maya goes up. So Prabhupada said, your purpose is not strong. If Maya is strong, it means your purpose is weak. So Maya, independently, it's not universally or globally or homogeneously or generically the same for everybody. It's how much you want to serve Krishna or not want to serve Krishna. And if you don't want to serve Krishna, then Krishna says, okay, you don't get me, you get Mahamaya, and she will facilitate you. Because that's what you want. And then we say, Maya is strong, but that's what we wanted. And if you want Krishna, then what purpose does Maya serve? No purpose. Yes?
For all like that, for example, for Haridas Thakur, he always wanted to be observed in Krishna consciousness, but Maya anyway came.
Maya came?
Yes, and
Maya came because she wanted, by the arrangement of Yogamaya, she was enacting a Leela to glorify Thakur Haridas. So she didn't come because he called her. She came to glorify him. And she came to teach an important principle, and it's in the purport to that story. It's a very important principle. Prabhupada says something we should note. He said, everyone in the material world is controlled by sex desire. And Haridas Thakur was not disturbed at all. And Prabhupada said, because he had taken shelter of the holy name, he wasn't disturbed. And therefore, unless you take shelter of the holy name, you will be disturbed. Would you like to hear a story? This is an insider story. Nobody knows this story. There's one big guru, I don't think he's alive anymore. I think his name is Chinmayananda. And one of our members, one of our main life members, because Indians, Hindus, they're very open to different gurus, and they always don't discriminate so much. So he was helping us, but he was also fond of this Chinmayananda. Chinmayananda is impersonalist. And so he had made some donation to sponsor his programs in Mauritius. Then he wanted to visit him, so he came to his hotel room to visit him, and he knocked on the door, and a lady in a nightgown answered. It wasn't the wrong room, it was the right room. So he was very, very disturbed. But it confirms what Prabhupada said, unless you take shelter of the holy name, nobody can give up sex desire. Some people give it up by attaining a status, pride. They so-called give it up, they become big renunciates, big famous renunciates, but that's also sex desire, so they haven't given it up. That's just taken it from a gross to a subtle level. So that was what Krishna engaged Maya as Yoga Maya to glorify Thakur Haridas and teach that principle. If you take shelter of the holy name, you'll be protected. If you don't, good luck. I'll pray for you. We're taking shelter of the holy name and we can hardly do it. What to speak if there's no holy name? Right? Yes.
but 16 rounds is not enough to take shelter of holy name.
Tell that to Prabhupada. See what he says. Would you tell that to Prabhupada? Would you? If I were you, I wouldn't. If I were you, I wouldn't. Because in Prabhupada's books he says, it is enough. By his blessing, he's blessed it to be enough. So it has Prabhupada's blessing, so it's enough. If you can do better, that's fine.
I'm asking this because in my personal experience, when I feel disturbance of my mind, for me it was not enough 16 rounds. And it takes much more to calm the mind. That's why.
Well, it also depends on the quality of your chanting, and it depends what you're going through. But in normal circumstances, if you chant and not trying to commit the offense, it is enough. But you can always do more. Why not? More the better. But Prabhupada, he really stressed preaching more than anything. More than chanting more, he stressed preaching. Now, if you could chant more and you're preaching also, fantastic. But if you're just chanting more and not preaching, he didn't really encourage that. So, you want to make sure you're doing it right. Because there could be a wrong way to chant more. Like your guru wants you to do something and you don't do it because you want to chant. And you're chanting to make advancement. Haribol. And you're chanting to make advancement. You can't, you chant to make advancement, you disobey the order of your guru. Right, so you have to be careful. You know that story I told? There was a sannyasi and he had a desire to do Ganga Parikrama, which meant he was going to walk around the whole path of the Ganga. It's quite a walk, right? And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati didn't want him to do it. And somehow he was attached to doing it, and he did it. And when he finished the parikrama, he came back and told Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, he said, come here. He was a sannyasi. He said, give me your danda. You're no longer a sannyasi. He took away his sannyas. So, you want to be careful, right? That what you're doing is in line with Prabhupada and your guru, right? Otherwise, you could chant more, but it won't help if you're neglecting something. If you have time, sure, do it. Why not? It's always good to chant. At the same time, I would say, make sure your 16 rounds are very good. Because if they're very good, you'll get a lot of strength. It's very interesting working with Prabhupada. Because if Prabhupada wanted the disciple to do something, that's all that mattered. It's like nothing else mattered. Prabhupada wanted this, you just do it. Somehow or other. And you'd say, you wouldn't really say, well, Prabhupada, is really, I don't really feel like it, and, I have some rounds left from yesterday, and, if I do that, I've been studying the Bhagavatam every day, it's going to throw me off. It wasn't like that. Not that we shouldn't be regulated, not that we shouldn't do good sadhana, but sometimes Prabhupada he just said, I want this. And you knew that's what you had to do, and that's how you made advancement. Does that make sense? Because sometimes Prabhupada was very heavy about things, so he wanted them, and you just did it. If you chanted 100 rounds that day and didn't do what Prabhupada wanted, that 100 rounds would really be namaparad, disobeying the order of the Guru. There's a famous story I've told before. It's two nice stories about this, really interesting stories. Both from Prabhupada's servants, two different servants. And Shrutakirti said, when he was in Los Angeles with Prabhupada, book distribution was at that time, 1972, 1973, or 1974. It was taking off, so more and more devotees were discovering how to distribute more books, and they were experiencing more and more ecstasy and energy and bliss. So Shrutakirti would see all these devotees coming back, so blissful, and I don't want to say became envious, but he really felt like, wow, I want to go out, they're so blissful. I want to do what they're doing and distribute books. So then he said, Prabhupada, so he was Prabhupada's personal servant. Personal servant means whatever Prabhupada needs, that's what you do. He needs some tea, you get it. He needs a massage, you give it. He needs his clothes now, you get them. He needs his lunch now, you serve it. You might even cook it. You're just with him all day, whatever he needs, you do it. That's personal. Go get me this, go get me that. You're always there, beck and call. So now the personal servant who's at beck and call is saying, Prabhupada, I'd like to go out on book distribution. Can I go out on book distribution? The devotees are so blissful. And Prabhupada many times said book distribution is most pleasing to him. So Prabhupada said, you can go out, but without my blessings. You understand? Because he had his service to personally serve Prabhupada. So if he went out on book distribution and distributed 100 big books, he wouldn't get any blessings, because he would be giving up the order of his guru to serve personally, to go out and do another service. So of course, most of us don't have our gurus telling us what to do. I'm just saying, but when Prabhupada gave a specific service, no one would think, in the name of making spiritual advancement, to do something else. There's another story. It's an amazing story. It illustrates the point of how you make advancement by mercy of Guru. So one of my godbrothers was Prabhupada's servant, and he told me this story. And he said, he was so busy, he was only chanting like 4 rounds a day. So it was getting a little difficult for him. And he was becoming familiar with Prabhupada because Prabhupada was very personal with him, and they didn't really have guru-disciple relationship. It was more like friends. They were traveling together, and so he was working like in the next office. Wherever they went, he was always there. So if you've ever worked with your guru a lot, then, it gets personal. You kind of forget, isn't it? That, you're just like, you're doing practical things that everybody does, so you kind of forget that he's my guru. You may not see him like Sakshat Hari and like that, you just see him like an advanced devotee or something. So he said he thought it would be better that he leave Prabhupada's servant because he was becoming familiar. And his sadhana wasn't good. And he was feeling, he could see that everybody else had a lot of awe and reverence for Prabhupada because they were only seeing Prabhupada a few days a year. But he was with him all the time, and he just felt it would be healthier for him if he left Prabhupada's service. Now, he was a very good secretary, and Prabhupada really liked him, and so Prabhupada didn't want him to leave. So that's the key here. He wanted to go because he thought it would be good for his spiritual life. And Prabhupada didn't want him to go, and Prabhupada didn't even consider the fact, he said, I'm only chanting 4 rounds. Prabhupada didn't say anything. He said, just, that's okay. I need you to stay. And then Prabhupada said, and he said, I'm worried about my spiritual life. And Prabhupada said, don't worry, I will maintain you. So in other words, he's staying up late at night. He's working all day, hardly any sadhana, hardly any hearing and chanting. He's not doing well spiritually. And Prabhupada needs him, and Prabhupada says, don't worry, I'll maintain your spiritual life. Then the next day in Bhagavatam class, Prabhupada made a statement. And while he made the statement, he looked directly at this devotee, and he said, don't try to make spiritual advancement, just try to please your spiritual master. And he looked directly at him. When I was initiated in March of 1970, having been a Hare Krishna for 2 months, living in the temple for 2 months, having shaved my head 2 months previously, having given up the 4 Regulative, finally following the 4 Regulative principles for 2 months, I got initiated. And the temple president brought us into his room before initiation, and he told us the same thing. He said, don't try to make spiritual advancement, just try to please your spiritual master. Important instruction. Now, you could say, if I chant more than 16 rounds, it's pleasing my spiritual master. Yes, nobody would say it isn't. Unless he tells you not to, right? Or unless he wants you to do something and you're avoiding it. In the name of spiritual advancement, that's dangerous. Isn't it? We told another story. A devotee wanted to chant 64 rounds. I just read that story today. You remember that story? He built a tree house and he was chanting 64 rounds in Mayapur. And he never asked Prabhupada if he should do it. And so they told Prabhupada. They said, Prabhupada, this is what he wants to do. And so, at least at that time in ISKCON, nobody did that. Everybody was engaged. We were all young and passionate, and we weren't the kind who could just sit down and chant. So, Prabhupada never recommended that or authorized it. And so he wanted to do something that Prabhupada never recommended and authorized. So devotees were concerned because we knew Prabhupada didn't authorize that. So they asked Prabhupada several times, and then he finally said, well, we shouldn't do what we want. They said, well, he wants to chant 64 rounds. And Prabhupada said, we shouldn't do what we want, we should do what Krishna wants. And then I read the story today and found out that that devotee, a few days later, he left Krishna consciousness. Now, the sad story about the secretary, who Prabhupada said, don't try to make advancement, just try to please your spiritual master. He still decided it would be better for him to give up his service. He was a GBC and resume his GBC service, which he did. And I was with him because I was preaching in the zone that he was taking over. So we traveled together, and I was with him. So he was telling me all these things. And he was definitely spiritually drained. In fact, he would give class, he'd read the purport, verse and purport, and then he would say, are there any questions? And if you have any, Mahatma can answer them. He was like, I'm serious, that's what he said. He was really drained. And after about 2 weeks, he went home to visit his mother. I guess he hadn't seen her in a while. And then shortly thereafter, he stayed, and I think he went back to college, became a doctor and a surgeon, a very well-known surgeon. I think he's retired now. But it was interesting. He left to regain his spiritual life, and he felt being with Prabhupada, his spiritual life was going down. And Prabhupada said, I will maintain you, which I understood also to mean, I am maintaining you now. And then we could see from this story that he was being maintained by Prabhupada, because when he left to get his spiritual life together, he left Krishna consciousness. Or at least, I don't know if he left, but he gave up his sannyasa, pursued grihastha life, which wasn't happening when he was with Prabhupada. So those are interesting instructions, aren't they? Do you find them interesting? So, generally Prabhupada had instructions which were not personally given to anybody. Just, you can do deity worship, you can work in the kitchen, you can run Sankirtan, you can distribute books, you can manage temples, you find your service. But if you were engaged in a managerial position as a temple president or higher, you would often get personal instructions. I need you to do this. And when you were given those instructions, that became your life and soul. That became your mission. And Prabhupada expected you to do it, no matter what. Sometimes the instructions were difficult. But you did it and you got rewarded. Definitely got rewarded. One more story. Another similar story. And I don't want you to think, after you hear all these stories, that, well, I don't really need to do good sadhana, or if I could chant extra rounds, I shouldn't, or I shouldn't study much. No, I don't mean it that way. But it's to balance things out. It's not just by hearing and chanting you make advancement, but it's by pleasing the Guru. So I told this story before, but it's worth saying now because we're discussing in the context of this idea of pleasing the Guru, you make advancement. When they were building the temple in Mumbai, it was extremely disturbing because the man who was selling us the property was trying to cheat us out of the property. He had arranged it with two persons before us. He'd sold the land and he never handed it over to them because through bribing the municipality and bribing his opponent's lawyers, he cheated them out of their deposits and never handed over the deed to the land. And he was trying to do that with us also. And it was so bad that later on we had found out that our lawyer was on his side, that he was paying our lawyer, and that he had bribed everyone in the municipality, so we couldn't get any permits to build, and if we didn't get permits to build, he had a right to take back. He had a right not to give us the whatever it's called conveyance, even though we paid about $50,000. So that's the person that we were dealing with. So dealing with that was really difficult because this was like the mafia on steroids. It was really just, every low, dirty trick you could do, he would do. And so the GBC at that time was so disturbed. They went to Prabhupada and he just said, I can't deal with this. This is so disturbing, I can't even focus on my japa. It's like, how am I going to be Krishna conscious? I can't even focus on my japa. This situation is so disturbing. And who knows what Prabhupada said? I told the story before. Who knows what Prabhupada said? Did Prabhupada say, you poor thing, just go to your room and chant, I'll take care of it? How many think Prabhupada said that? Who would like to take a guess what Prabhupada said? What did Prabhupada say?
I know, me too.
Yeah. Prabhupada said, Tamal Krishna Maharaj said, I'm so disturbed I can't chant my rounds properly. And Prabhupada said, me too. So Prabhupada was in the same situation. And so he said, just give this life to Lord Chaitanya, spread Krishna consciousness, he'll come and take you back to Godhead. So it wasn't Prabhupada validating, minimizing sadhana, but it was emphasizing the importance of spreading this movement and getting Lord Chaitanya's mercy so much so that you would go back to Godhead. Even because sometimes you couldn't chant good rounds because of the disturbance that you were dealing with, you'd still go back to Godhead. As opposed to running away from it to be peaceful, to chant good rounds. Then you wouldn't get the mercy. You understand? Because that's what your guru wants. So sometimes your guru wants something and maybe you'll be disturbed. Maybe you won't chant good rounds during that time. That's what you have to go through. But that he's pleased. Does that make sense? I don't know if you're happy to hear that, but it's just the way it works. You see, when you understand this principle, what happens is you never get disturbed anymore. Because the reason we get disturbed is because our little world gets shaken, isn't it? Well, I was doing this every day at this time, and now my guru asked me to do this, and now everything's disrupted. And that's why we get disturbed, because we're overly concerned about our own regulation and program. When you're in the mood of whatever the guru wants, I'll do, then you don't get disturbed. And then you feel the mercy. And it's not all the time your guru is going to ask you to do something that's going to upset your schedule. But sometimes you will, right? Like if you're a world preacher and you're traveling and your flight is at midnight, that upsets your schedule. And you land in a country with 3 hours sleep on an airplane. That definitely upsets your schedule. And it takes you 4 days to recover, sometimes a week. Sometimes it's taken me a week to recover. I flew into Israel one year, and they had a program at 7 in the morning that I was supposed to go to. And I looked at my watch and I realized that 7 in the morning was 2 a.m. my time where I had just come from. And because it was, that 7 in the morning was 2 a.m. my time, I really couldn't get to sleep till about midnight my time. So I basically had 2 hours sleep and went off at 7 a.m. to do a program, to do like a 3-hour program in the morning. Or I think I didn't get back till the afternoon. That's what you have to do. And Prabhupada did that, and he expected us to do that. And he didn't expect us that our whole life would be like that, but that sometimes it would be that way. But when you're willing to do that, it doesn't bother you because you don't think about being disturbed or not being disturbed. You think, well, this is my guru wants, so I do it. And you're happy, and it's fine. Sometimes you go out and you do book distribution, you go to rock concerts, and you go into bars, you go to Las Vegas. It's like, who wants to go there? But even though you're there, because you're meeting people and giving them books, you're connected with Prabhupada. And you make so much advancement. And you're living in a van, and you have this strange schedule, and you have to go to a river to take a bath, or a car wash to take a bath, or a petrol station, and put a hose in their spigot, and 4 a.m, take a bath. Who wants to do that? Well, maybe if you're 20 years old, it's fun. But after a while, it's difficult. But you do it because that facilitates your service, and you're blissful. So that's the idea. And then you report to Prabhupada, we distributed so many books, and then Prabhupada writes you a letter and says, I'm very pleased. And that's it. That's all you wanted to hear. And all that austerity, it just turns into total bliss. You got that one letter, I'm very pleased. And the interesting thing about the letters that Prabhupada would write, in many of the letters he would say things like, I'm very pleased with the sacrifice you're making. Like he knew what we were going through. Going out in the cold weather, living in the vans, going out for long hours, eating peanuts and raisins 3 times a day, or granola. My godbrothers did peanuts and raisins, we did granola. You know granola? Muesli, yeah? Breakfast, lunch, dinner. You don't have to cook it. If it's granola, you don't have to cook it. Just eat it. Simple. So we never had to cook. So that's austere, isn't it? You like to try that? Just eat granola for the next 2 weeks. Yes?
So it's not about the result, it's about the endeavor. Even if devotee don't qualify to do some kind of service, but he wanted.
Yeah.
It's not about the result, right?
No, but it's not about the result. It's about the effort. But this is so weird. The light seems so different today than yesterday. How is that possible? Is it because those backlights aren't on?
I think we didn't switch the light.
All these shadows, I've got the horror movie effect. You know the horror movie effect? You have shadows on your face. The monster. That didn't work. That's strange. Maybe a few bulbs had burned out. Like there's only one bulb there, one bulb there. It's just the Swiss way of saving money. Yeah, anyway. So what was I saying?
It's about endeavor or not?
Oh yeah. Yeah. So
Result.
it's about the endeavor. But generally, eventually you succeed if you're sincere. Now, I'll tell you a story where it wasn't about the endeavor. It was about getting it done. This just shows you how Prabhupada sometimes dealt with us. And I think by hearing these stories, this will sometimes help you understand a little bit why you might think sometimes that Prabhupada disciples are sometimes strict. Either they're really loose or they're really strict, right? They come in 2 varieties. You've probably seen both, right? Not so much in the middle, a little like they're either really strict or like whatever. It seems like, right? But I think a lot of you may think, well, Prabhupada disciples, they're kind of strict, sometimes they're kind of heavy. So in Detroit, I was in Detroit in 1975. The current temple is called the Fisher Mansion. It's this beautiful mansion, incredible building on an estate along a river. Like you may have seen Bhaktivedanta Manor, but this is like that, but it's ornate. It's like Bhaktivedanta Manor, but ornate. Gold leaf everywhere, marble everywhere. Just opulent rooms everywhere. This is built by someone who had, money to burn. So when Prabhupada saw the building, he loved it. And it was in the worst neighborhood, It was in the worst neighborhood in the worst city in America. Detroit had the highest crime rate. In the city that has the highest crime rate, it's in the worst neighborhood in that city, or one of the worst. But It was a beautiful building, and I guess at one time it was a nice neighborhood. And Prabhupada wanted to get the building. Right? So they negotiated. Only $300,000. And Prabhupada said every room was worth $300,000. And there are many, many rooms. I was just there in September. It's the first time I was there since 1975. So these big, beautiful rooms, just incredible. You know, the bathrooms are nicer than most millionaires' living rooms. It's just like incredible. So Prabhupada went from Detroit to Toronto. Detroit to Toronto is just straight north into Canada. It's not that far. I don't know, maybe an hour or two flights, maybe an hour flight, 45 minutes. Not that, couldn't be that far. Yeah, not that far. So, what happened was, devotees started thinking, this neighborhood, this is really a bad neighborhood, you know, and if we get a temple there, no devotees are going to want to rent houses or buy houses in that neighborhood, and maybe it won't be safe, because it's a high crime city and a high crime neighborhood. At the same time, the owner was being talked to by his friends and said, why are you selling this to the Hare Krishnas? You shouldn't sell this to the Hare Krishnas. Somehow or other, they didn't want it to be a temple. So he was saying, I don't want to sell it to you. And the devotees were thinking, well, maybe this is Krishna's arrangement, you know, that we shouldn't get it because it's a bad neighborhood. The Prabhupada didn't mind the neighborhood at all. He just said, invite the neighbors to come, feed them prasadam, invite them in, and tell them you can steal anything you want. That's what he said. Come take prasadam, go in our house. Do you want to steal anything? Take it. Prabhupada said the neighborhood will be upgraded by our coming. So he definitely wanted the place, there was no question. So the GBC had called Prabhupada to tell him, well, the owner is hesitating now, and we're also thinking it's a bad decision because it's such a bad neighborhood. And Prabhupada wanted it. So that was the wrong thing to say. Because when Prabhupada left, he said, I want this. So, good disciple, when the Guru says, I want this, that's all you hear. And that goes into one-track mind and you do it. So when he said, I don't think we should get this, or it may not be a good idea, that was the wrong thing. So Prabhupada said, if you don't get this building, then what is the use of you going on? Which basically is saying, like, what's the use of you living if you don't get this building? So in that situation, it wasn't, well, the disciple's going to try his best. No, in that situation is, this is what my Guru wants, I'm going to get it. The same thing, Prabhupada was trying to get property in Mayapur, and he was having all kinds of trouble. And he called in Krsna Maharaj and Jayapataka Maharaj, and he said, you two, you're the ones who can secure this. Go and secure the land. So they went out, secured the land, they came back, it was like midnight or 1 a.m. And they said, here, Prabhupada, here's the deed, put it on his desk. So naturally the disciple wants to do that. And when the disciple knows this is what the Guru wants, then in those situations it goes beyond trying. It's like, we have to make this happen. And if we don't have that attitude, I don't know if we're going to make it happen. Right? Like the temple here, if we said, well, this is what Prabhupada wants, so we'll sincerely try. Right? Which basically we're doing for the last 30 years, sincerely trying, and there wasn't anything happening. And I'm sure, obviously, at some point, someone just said, damn it, this is Prabhupada's desire, we have to make it happen. No more of this sincerely trying, let's do it. You know how Prabhupada's Samadhi was built? There wasn't money to build it. It was going on year after year after year, the Pushpa Samadhi. There was no money to build it. Tamal Krishna Maharaj flew to wherever Ambarish was staying, went to his house, didn't tell him he was coming, knocked on the door. And there he is. His wife answers, your husband home, I want to see him. And he just sat down and convinced him, you have to give the money to build this. So that's what a disciple will do. If something has to happen, as I said, we're going to make it happen. So I think that's important. When you know what your spiritual master wants, that you make it happen. Right? Like, when I was a young devotee, Prabhupada was stressing, in those first years, he was stressing more than book distribution, opening temples. So that's what we were doing. If you want to have fun, and you have the Veda base, you want to have some real fun, some Hare Krishna history fun? If you have the Veda base, so you can get it online, go and look at the BTGs. Because in the BTGs, it lists all the temples. So go back to the first BTG and see how many temples there are. One temple San Francisco, one temple one temple New York. Then 1967, then there's Montreal, then there's San Francisco, then there's Los Angeles. Then 68, there's Seattle. I think 69, Vancouver, Boulder, Colorado. You'll see. So you can go through and see each, if you want to do each, you can do January of every year, or you can go through every issue, and you can see how many temples are being opened. And so you get around 1972, 73, and you'll just see, it's like amazing. But even when I joined, everybody was opening temples, even then, 1970. When I joined, there were 17 temples in ISKCON. And the temple I joined had about 12 devotees. The temple in San Francisco across from us had 25, and that was, I think, the second or third largest temple. Los Angeles, I think, had 35. That was a large temple. So large temples had 35. Small temples had between 4 and 8. So let's say we give the benefit of the doubt and we say 20 devotees in 17 temples. That's only 340 devotees living in temples in the movement. And the average temple had like 4 people congregation. There wasn't a congregation. So we will give the benefit of the doubt and say 30. 17 times 30. So maybe 540 devotees in the whole Hare Krishna movement when I joined. And when Prabhupada left, there were about 10,000 devotees living in temples, and about 5,000 initiated. And 17 temples went to 108. So you have some fun and see how many temples were being opened every year. Because that was the stress. So because Prabhupada wanted, what was happening? Because Prabhupada wanted it, whenever a big temple would get a devotee who'd been around about a year, 8 months to a year and a half, that we thought could open a temple, we'd give him 3 devotees and we'd say, here's your city, go open a temple. They'd take a bus there, each one had a BTG box, and in the BTG box was everything they owned. And they would go there to start a temple. Didn't know anybody or anything, they'd just go there with their BTG box. Because that's what Prabhupada wanted, so that's what they did. So I think if you do that, you'll always be successful, right? At least that's the way I feel. I feel that if a devotee is in the mood that we have to make this happen, this is what Prabhupada wants, or this is what my Guru Maharaj wants, we have to make it happen, you'll make incredible amounts of advancement. Like I have a disciple in Mexico, and I said, I want you to get 1,000 people in a park in Mexico chanting japa. Because I want to sit on the stage in front of 1,000 people chanting, and I can ask Prabhupada, come look. Look, I want to show you what we've done. We've got 1,000 people who are just learning to chant japa now. We're training 1,000 people to chant japa. Maybe in 5 years there'll be 10,000 people here. So why do I want to do that? Because I want to see Prabhupada smile. I think he'd be pleased. And if we could get 1,000, that means in 5 years we could get 10,000. Why not? Right? So I have a disciple there, and he's, Guru Maharaj, we're going to do it. We're going to make it happen. So he's working on it. So I think that's really good for him, that he understood, and he wanted to make it happen. And so Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam. Rupa Goswami understood the mind of Lord Chaitanya, the desire of Lord Chaitanya. There's a story, Giriraj Swami, he said, Srila Prabhupada, he said, Srila Prabhupada, it seems to me that there are two things that you desire most. And he was just analyzing what Prabhupada wanted, like what was going on in Prabhupada's mind for spreading Krishna consciousness. He said, book distribution and building Mayapur. Prabhupada, are these the two things you want most? And Prabhupada said, yes, you have understood. See, so that's how a disciple thinks. Like, what is in the heart? What does the Guru want? And also, not just in terms of service, but in terms of your own purification. What do you want? You want me to rise early, chant offensively, study your books, these things. It's not one-sided. So you want to understand the mind and heart of Prabhupada, and the more you read about Prabhupada, the more you read the biographies of Prabhupada, the more you'll understand him. And I think it's really important. Because if you don't understand Prabhupada, you could read his books and actually misunderstand what he's saying. Because you need to understand him as a person and his desire and how he spread Krishna consciousness and what he emphasized. That's important. I was having a discussion with Giriraj Swami. In the summer, he said something I really liked. He has a disciple who's married to my disciple. And they were moving from where they were to another place where there were all kinds of devotees and all different kinds of movements. And they're both kind of young devotees, and I wanted to give some advice. Well, how should you deal with people in other movements? Because we want to be friendly with everyone. We want to be respectful. And I said, Maharaj, you must be instructing your disciple, because the place they're going, they're different Gaudiya Vaishnavas with different, slightly different ways of looking at Krishna consciousness. And he said, yes, what I would say is they're all nice devotees, they're all sincere, and they're all spreading Krishna consciousness. But if you associate outside ISKCON, you're going to get a little slightly different perspective of Prabhupada, depending what organization you associate with. Their understanding of Prabhupada will be different from ISKCON's. And I thought that was a good observation, which I've seen to be true. They're seeing Prabhupada slightly differently than we do. So I think it's important to understand Prabhupada. Actually, there was this a conversation. I don't know if you know about this. It was an interesting conversation. It was happened in 2002 with Hridayananda Maharaj, Bhakti Charu Swami. Trivida Prabhu was there, Savas Prabhu, the president of LA. Trivida Prabhu is the editor of BBT Books. Then Bhagavan, who was a former Guru GBC, he was there. And Narayan Maharaj was there, a couple of Narayan Maharaj's people. And Jadharani, one of the first devotees, were there. And so they were talking about how to work together better. And so Bhagavan, who was making a very important point, he was explaining to Narayan Maharaj, he said that I think one of the problems is that these devotees here were trained by Prabhupada. They were managers in Prabhupada's presence, and he told them certain things. So you might say things not knowing what Prabhupada said that are different from what Prabhupada said, and therefore it creates some division. Because they have to be strict to what Prabhupada said. And unless you were working with Prabhupada, how would you know all the things he said? And these were the people that worked with him. So I think that was a valid point. He was trying to help Narayan Maharaj know that sometimes there's conflict because these devotees have to adhere to everything that Prabhupada established. And that's what they're trying to do. And sometimes in doing that, other people get offended, unfortunately. So I think it's important for us to understand what Prabhupada wanted. So you can read all the books about Prabhupada, all the biographies about Prabhupada. It's very helpful. You'll understand so much. And you'll understand his books better. And if you want to read something which is life-changing, this will blow you. This will scare you. Don't read it at night. You won't be able to sleep. Do you really want to understand what it was like to serve Prabhupada and be with him? When the Prabhupada Leela Amrita was being written, devotees were interviewed. Hundreds and hundreds of devotees were interviewed. And one devotee named Rameshwar Prabhu was interviewed. And his interview is transcribed in about 170 pages. And I think it's on his Facebook page. You can download it from his Facebook page. Rameshwar, R-A-M-E-S-V-A-R-A. Rameshwar Das. Go to his Facebook page. I have this file on my computer, so worst case scenario, I can maybe post it on my website, or maybe I have posted it. It's possible. You go to my website, I don't know. Guru Nishta would know. But if not, I could also post it. This is the most amazing thing, the most amazing insight into what it was like to work with Prabhupada. The things I'm saying tonight are clearly demonstrated. If Prabhupada wanted something, it was just like, he wants it, that's it. For example, when they wanted the land in Mumbai, Prabhupada called Rameshwar and said, I need $50,000 in like 3 weeks. That was it. I call Leela Shakti and say, Leela Shakti, I need $50,000 in 3 weeks. Where am I going to get that? And I think it was $50,000 a month for like 6 months, or something like. And so he talks about the Prabhupada said that, so I had to figure it out and how he figured it out. And then Prabhupada wanted 17 volumes of Chaitanya Charitamrita printed in 2 months, and they were printing 1 a year. And they thought if they could do 2 a year, that would be like incredibly phenomenal. And Prabhupada said, no, 17. And they figured out how to do it. So he talks about those things, all the challenges. And so you could see the mood. As if Prabhupada said this, we would just do it. And then he talks a lot about Prabhupada's mood, his vision in making the world Krishna conscious, which is very inspiring. Because Prabhupada was revealing to him his vision, what the future would be like, and how degraded things would be, and the place our movement would have in the future. And it gives a vision, an inspiring vision. So if you read that, it's going to give you, I think it's going to give all of you a completely different vision of Prabhupada than you've ever had. It's just amazing. And it will take you back to living in ISKCON in the 1970s. That's what it was. Just reading that, you'll understand what it was like. And that will better help you understand Prabhupada's disciples if sometimes you think they're heavy or narrow or fanatic. Then by reading what Rameshwar wrote, you'll understand why they're like that. They're not heavy and narrow and fanatic. They're just trying to be chaste to Prabhupada. That's all. Because that's, what Prabhupada said. So, he called scientists demons for good reason. So, if we say they're demons, we're repeating Prabhupada. And Prabhupada was, it was also interesting because everyone who was joining ISKCON were hippies. So part of the mentality of hippies were called counterculture. Counterculture is kind of like the opposite of politically correct. Because politically correct kind of means what sits easily with the greatest number of people. Like political correctness is about being accepting of everybody. Any prejudicial statement that this group is better than that, that's not politically correct. Breaking the status quo is not politically correct. But as hippies, we wanted anything but being politically correct because we didn't agree with the way society was. So when Prabhupada would say all these things which were not politically correct, for us it was like a cheerleader. Jai Prabhupada! And it was just like, yes. He was just like turning everything on its head. So for us it wasn't hard. It's just how we thought also. When Prabhupada would talk about cheaters, we'd say yes. We talk about materialistic mudhas, yes. The whole hippie movement was a reaction to that. So, the video stops every 2 seconds. Does it start again? Does it stop every 2 seconds for everybody? Jimena was on the internet and she accidentally came across a site that was blaspheming devotees, and then her internet crashed. And she wrote me, she said, what was that all about? Divine intervention, protecting her. So, you have any questions? We didn't even get started today's class. You all look pretty depressed right now. You know, in Prabhupada's time, you wouldn't give a lecture like this. You wouldn't have to. This was just like, this was going on every day. You wouldn't have to talk about it because this is what it was like. Does that make sense? That was just normal. You're a devotee, you join, 6 months later, you're off with a 1-year devotee, traveling 400 miles to open a temple in the middle of nowhere with no money and no car. And 2 kurtas and 2 dhotis, a sweater, a Bhagavad Gita, a couple pairs of socks, and some beads. Why? Because Prabhupada wanted that. And where were you going to sleep? Who knows? And if you're lucky, maybe they gave you a car. I don't remember. No, they didn't. I was one of those who started a temple. There was no car. There were 4 of us in a 1-bedroom apartment. No problem. That's what Prabhupada wanted, so we did it. Then we went to Vancouver. Cold. No money. No money for warm clothes. We had snowing and we have tennis shoes, Converse. What do you call them? You call them tennis shoes? Sneakers? What do you call them? Sneakers, no gloves, no jackets. Winter comes. Devotee knocks on the door. I want to join. I saw you guys chanting. I want to join. Okay. He opens up. He says, here, I've got a suitcase full of sweaters and socks and gloves and hats. That's how it was. I swear, this is how it was. Time to pay the rent. We don't have any money. Knock, knock, knock. I want to join. Here's all the money I have. It's the day rent is due. It's the exact amount of rent. I swear. That's what it was like. And so we would do it because Prabhupada wanted it. That's why. It wasn't because it was comfortable or easy, and that's where we got our strength, we knew that's what Prabhupada wanted. So if you have that mood, then, in answer to Leela Shakti's question, if you have that mood, you will be successful. Because you can't stand not to be successful. You have to open the temple. Prabhupada wants it. You have to make the temple successful. You have to, because he wants it. And when you have to, you succeed. Right? If it's, I don't know, it's going to be hard, I don't really feel like it. You know the story. This is probably the most amazing story to illustrate Prabhupada's mood. You know the story. They're on the train going to wherever, and they stop in Delhi. On the train, a man gets on and says, you need to start a temple here. Prabhupada said, that's a good idea. Gurudas, Jamuna, Gopal, 1 or 2 others, get off the train. No money. He wants to start a temple, he'll take care of you. And he said, I have a place you can stay. It was like some, I don't know what. Some dharmshala, maybe a step up from a goshala. And they said it was completely rat-infested, dirty, no beds, nothing. Same thing starting Bombay, nowhere to live, living in sheds, infested with mosquitoes. You know, that's what Prabhupada was doing. He was starting the movement. And so this devotees just, okay, this is what we have to do. And they did it. And they all made incredible advancement. So that's the secret of success. Yes? What does the Guru want and how can I satisfy him? What's in his heart? What's in his mind? How can I please him? Let's make it happen. So, this is a great story. There was a lecture. You've probably seen it. Your Prabhupada said, you know, the scientists, they're the greatest rascals on the planet, something like that. You seen that lecture? The greatest, he said, the greatest enemies of modern civilization. Prabhupada was on fire. Can you imagine sitting in the class? I was in that class. Prabhupada was saying, the greatest enemies of human civilization. We've never heard such things before. Prabhupada's shaking, the walls are shaking, the windows are breaking. He said, therefore I say, distribute book, distribute book, distribute book. You know, the Prabhupada's saying, and we'll expose all these rascals like that. So, this devotee, he hears that lecture. On the spot, he says, I vow to distribute 108 big books. At that time in ISKCON, I think like 20 big books was like, if you were really good, you could distribute 20 big books. Something like that. This is very early. So to say I'll do 108 was like, oh my God, that's like, Bhishma. It was like amazing. But he got so inspired. Therefore I say, distribute book, distribute book, distribute book. So he goes out, you know. But the devotees, they all go out every day. They all go back 6, 7 in the evening. He stays out. 9 o'clock, he's not back. 10 o'clock, he's not back. 11, he's not back. Midnight, he's not back. 1 o'clock, he's not. 2 or 3. He shows up for Mangal Arati in his whatever he was wearing. He might have been wearing a dhoti. Those days they were. Shows up Mangal Arati, 108 big books. Amazing, huh? So that was the mood. And Prabhupada would say, oh, I get so much energy when you distribute books. So naturally, they wanted to distribute more books. I get energy when you open temples, when you preach in colleges, when you preach to the side. So Prabhupada was just encouraging us in all these programs. So everybody was so dedicated. You know the thing, the nicest thing about those days is that it was, if you lived in a temple, it was virtually impossible not to be on complete fire because everybody in the temple was on fire. Because Prabhupada was encouraging everybody. So that as the Sankirtan devotees got inspired, that would inspire other devotees. Well, we should do our service as enthusiastically as they do their service. And as they got inspired in one temple, then people would get inspired in another temple. So everywhere you went, devotees were inspired. So it was it was virtually impossible not to be inspired because everyone was operating on this very high level of dedication. That was just normal. That was the default, normal, average devotee was completely dedicated. And therefore you see so much success. If you did a history to study how ISKCON developed, you'll see so many programs are being started all the time. Why were they being started? Not because Prabhupada was saying started, but because the devotees were inspired. And of their own volition, they were starting these programs. They were going out and doing them. Oh, Prabhupada, we just did this. This is like we, in Vancouver, when I was a president, we went out on traveling Sankirtan. Nobody did that. Nobody told us to do it. We drove for like a day and a half in the middle of winter, went to all these new towns, interviewed on radio, television, meeting all these people who never saw us before. It was amazing. Prabhupada didn't say, go travel to these other cities. It was just inspiration. So there was so much inspiration, so much was going on. And then all the news was spreading. In this temple, they're doing this, 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 this. And then you'd think, what am I doing? We have to do this, this, and this. So it was pretty impossible not to be inspired, because everything, everywhere was inspiring. Everybody was on the edge. They just wanted to please Prabhupada. So that's the secret. That's where you get your inspiration. Does that make sense? Yeah. You look so depressed. Well, I don't know if it's depressed, shocked. What are you thinking? This will never happen. This is 2017. Are you kidding? This will never happen. Read the Rameshwar. Read the Rameshwar interview. That will change your life. That will give you, I think, one of the best visions of Prabhupada you could ever have. Hare Krishna. Any questions? Any doubts? Arguments?
I've been reading Nimuna's book. I'm on the end of the second one.
Mm-hmm.
It's so inspiring. Like,
The dedication.
yeah,
Right.
everything.
I would say that's probably the outstanding quality of the disciples of Prabhupada, is their dedication. Just like that's what's important. Yes.
Which mood do you think devotees are right now?
Well, devotees are different everywhere. I mean, one of the differences is we have more grihastas, and more grihastas working. In those days, most grihastas didn't work outside the temple community. So even if, most devotees live close to the temple, and most grihastas went to Mangalarti. So there are temples that are like that are some that are fired up. So I think it has a big difference. The culture is different because the logistics are different. Especially logistics, the vastu, the environment, more people living outside than inside. And to see, the thing is, Prabhupada was moving very fast. He was trying to establish Krishna consciousness really quickly, and it was hard to keep up with him. So he was moving, we had to move. Just like he was translating more books than we were printing. So the press had to just keep producing. The artists had to keep producing. And as there are more books, the book distributors had to distribute more. And as more was distributed, more people were becoming devotees. So we need bigger buildings. Everything was like moving really fast. It was actually moving so fast that we didn't have an infrastructure, and at some point it kind of crashed. We couldn't maintain it well. A little bit, yeah. Yes?
Говорится, что в Кали-югу поклонение божествам не настолько актуально, как остальные виды служения.
It is said that in Kali Yuga, deity worship is not as relevant.
Mm-hmm.
Так Шрила Прабхупада большой акцент делал на открытии храма. Их можно было уже открывать как ведические церкви без поклонения
But
божествам.
Srila Prabhupada, he emphasized opening temples. He didn't even open like Vedic centers.
Mm-hmm.
Но в центре были всегда божества.
The deities were in the center always.
Так почему?
Why?
Yes and no. Yes and no. Because at one point he said better just worship Panchatattva or Gauranitai than Radha and Krishna. Because if you commit offense to Radha and Krishna, that affects your spiritual life. And it's more complicated. To the traveling parties, he said, you put a Bhagavatam on your altar. So naturally, temples will have deities, because temples are the places where we go to become purified. And the reason in those days that the deity worship became elaborate is because we had so many devotees in the temple. And we had so many Brahmins, and they wanted to worship deities. And you had so many people, and you had money, so you could make the deity worship very opulent. Do you know why some temples have so many deities? Like we'll have small Gaur Nitai, large Gaur Nitai, small Radha Krishna, large Radha Krishna. Then they'll have Giriraj, and they'll have Jagannath. You know why? Because so many devotees wanted to do deity worship. They just kept installing more and more deities for all the devotees. Then at a certain point, things went down, and now there are more, in some temples there's more deities than devotees. Yeah. If it's a question of deity worship or Sankirtan, you'll always give preference to Sankirtan. If it's a question of should we increase the deity worship at the cost of Sankirtan, you wouldn't do it. You would only increase it as a byproduct. Is that all right? Or you're asking something else?
My spiritual master, Krishna Goswami, he emphasizes deity worship and he puts a lot of attention.
Oh, himself personally. Yeah. Not at the cost of preaching. Right? Yeah, because you have a lot of devotees in India, so you can do it. And it's important for people in India, right? People go to the temples to see deities, and our deities are the nicest. So having beautiful deity worship is part of the preaching in India. In America, if it's just for Americans, it's basically for devotees, more than the public. In India, it's more for the public, because they need that. That's where Indians are at. That's why they have Sita, Ram, Lakshman, Hanuman in Delhi. Those aren't the deities that we as Gaudiya Vaishnavas worship, but it's for the... So we're doing that deity worship for them. Does that make sense? So the deity worship becomes part of the preaching also in India. But there's a nice story about that. You know, a lot of temples, they have stories around the deities. The deities have this pastime, and if you you go to this temple or pray to these deities, you'll get some benediction. Like in Tirupati, that said, you go there and you ask for whatever you want, Balaji will give it to you. And so one devotee thought, well, I think it was Juhu, he thought, well, why don't we just make a story like that? If you come and pray to Rasa Vihari or give them some money, then this and that will happen, some material benefit. And Prabhupada said, no. Even that may be true. He doesn't want to attract people for the wrong reason. Then they'll just come for material benefit. But because ISKCON has the nicest deity worship anywhere, that's where a lot of our prestige is. In India, anyway. Yes? No one has deity worship like we do, that I've seen. Has anyone seen better deity worship than ISKCON? Anywhere? Yeah.
Maybe Radharaman.
But I mean, the level of opulence, at least external opulence and beauty, the maintenance of the temples, ISKCON has such a high standard. So that's important, especially in countries where they're Indians. In the West, not that important. It's important for devotees. The temple I was president, all we had was a picture of Panchatattva. That was our deities, and a picture of Prabhupada and Bhaktisiddhanta. And if we needed to travel, we put some dried fruit on the altar and some nuts, and then we'd go. So it was good for preaching. Well, there was only 4 of us. We really didn't need to do deity worship because we needed all 4 of us out on Sankirtan. So I was just in a temple, and they used to have like 30 devotees. Now they only have 10 or 11, and it's really hard for them. And they've had to reduce the standards of deity worship, and they may have to reduce them even more because it's becoming so hard. It's getting in the way of preaching. So the GBC, or one of the GBCs, said, well, Lord Chaitanya, he likes Sankirtan, so if you have to reduce it to increase Sankirtan, it's okay. You had a question? No. An answer? No. Yes?
Принцип понять, что очень глубокий его, насколько он работает, вернее, как он работает в нашем случае, то есть, первое, там, второго, третьего поколения. Гуру могут иметь разные гуру в наше время, они могут иметь разные настроения и разные акценты из того, что хотел Прабхупада. На чем нам больше акцентироваться, на том, что хотел Прабхупада, или на том, что хочет наш гуру?
So for us, the devotees of the second and next generation, for us we have we follow different gurus, and different gurus are having different moods, like they're having within the mood of Srila Prabhupada. So in which direction we should give more emphasis into Srila Prabhupada's mood, or within the mood of our spiritual master within Srila Prabhupada?
This principle to please.
Well, I would...
Stand mind and to please,
Yeah.
and it will give you success. In our situation, how this form...
Yeah. It depends on how much direct interaction you have with your spiritual master. In other words, let's say you're not directly serving, you're just serving in your temple. You're not serving your spiritual master directly. So then you get an inspiration, I feel Prabhupada wants this, you go to your temple president, discuss it. But if your spiritual master calls you at some point and says, I really need you to do this for the next 3 months or something, then he talks to your temple president says it's okay, then generally that's what you would do, because there's a direct order there. Now, if you felt that the service you're doing is higher or more important than what your guru wants, or maybe you know someone else who could do the service, you could discuss that with them. Say, is it possible we could ask so-and-so to do it because the service I'm doing here is very important, or it's very successful, or if I leave it, it won't continue. So that discussion could be there. Or maybe both can go on. I think it's more when you're direct, if your spiritual master is asking you to do something, or he has a very specific mission that he needs help with, then you should try to serve that. Unless it's just you have a very valuable, more important service that's really needed somewhere else, and you can't, then you would just discuss that with him. Sometimes a disciple will be inspired to do something that's different from what their spiritual master needs. And so that can be discussed, and the spiritual master can work that out. Well, let's say your spiritual master needs something done, and you're the only one that can do it. He's probably going to want you to do it until he finds somebody else. So probably you should do it. Yes? Oh, yeah, right.
Which stream the disciple should take.
Or festivals like some.
your spiritual master's into farming, this spiritual master's into book distribution, this one's into devotee care, this one's into Krishna West, this one's into Krishna East, this one's into Krishna North, and this one's into... Generally, the spiritual master will know that and will be able to see that you're engaged in a way that inspires you. It's in certain situations, you may have specific skills that he needs that he'll ask you personally, can you do this? So then generally disciple will take it, that this is important, this is what he wants. A lot of times you'll see if you read the different biographies of Prabhupada, that Prabhupada engaged somebody in some service that was needed. And when the service was done, then they said, Prabhupada, now I want to go. And he would say, okay, because he could see that that service was not really what they were meant to do. But at that time, they were the only ones who could do it. So it wasn't like their long-time service, but it was what they could do. So sometimes it's like that. Well, I need you to do this. Let's just get this done, and then you can go back to your service. Sometimes that will happen. Or otherwise, he'll just see that you're not suited for the service that I need, so he'll let you do what you're doing, because that will be more inspiring for you and better for you. Or sometimes he'll say, this is what I need. What do you think? Are you able to do it? And then you can talk about it. That could be service, that could be money, that could be so many things. This is the help I need. Can you do this? And then you discuss it. Some of you have gurus with lots of disciples, so that's never going to happen. There won't be that. So then, just in general, you're not interacting much with your guru, so you're interacting with your temple president, and so your question's not really, it doesn't really come up, because your guru just wants you to follow your temple president, and whatever your guru's mood is, he doesn't expect you necessarily to follow that in terms of preaching, maybe in terms of character, but in terms of preaching and service, he would expect you to follow your temple president in that temple. Right? Pravda? Da? Yeah.
My Guru Maharaj, he's only this Lukra Maharaj, he said one time I asked him, I want to do some personal service for you. And he said, whatever you do, whatever when you chant, when you read, whatever service you do it for me.
Yeah, that's true. Everything goes through the spiritual master. All your service. So, I'm going back, and Sakyaras Prema says, I have a nice jacket. You like my jacket? Made in Italy. Wool. Very expensive. Srimati bought it for me. What happened was, I came on a flight, one of these overnight flights. Practically 90% of overnight flights, I forget something because I wake up and I have to get off the plane. So I lost a jacket. So devotees gave me a jacket. Then I took another flight and I lost that jacket. And I know where I left it, but the airport, I said I left it on this bus that took me from the airplane to the terminal. And I said, we didn't find it. So this is the third jacket I had since I left America in October. But Krishna had a plan that I would lose 2 jackets to get such a nice jacket, right? And it was his plan, because I'm never going to lose this jacket because this is really expensive. And the other ones were like thrift shop jackets, so I lose them. You know, do you ever have cheap pens? Easy to lose? Expensive pens? You don't lose. Yes? Someone gave me an expensive watch. So he said, Mahatma, you have to look important. Wear this watch. Because I had a Casio watch. He goes, wear this watch. This is a Swiss watch. So now I look important, right? Do I look important? Don't you go like this? How do I do it? I go like this. Take pictures like this, look important. Yeah, There's a psychology, that if you're trying to raise money for a project, it's hard to get money. But when the project is finished, everybody gives money. They like give money when you don't need it anymore. So it's like, if you dress like a mendicant, no one gives you money. If you dress like you're rich, then everyone gives you money. Yes, someone had, yes. Yeah.
Этот принцип удовлетворения гуру, и он, принцип, самый главный принцип критерий успеха в настоящем личном продвижении, зависит он от могущества самого гуру, от духовного могущества самого гуру. То есть, например, Прабхупада говорит, я могу поддержать это духовно, но то есть, этот принцип, он работает, это универсальный принцип, он работает в отношении любого типа уровня.
This principle of guru disciple, if you please the spiritual master, you will achieve total success. Does that work on? It depends on the power that the spiritual master has.
No. No, it's a very good question, because it does. He's saying, well, the principle of pleasing the guru and to make advancement, does it depend on the level of the guru? No, because it's a principle. It's a principle. Not only that, it works for any devotee. Because I noticed this. I don't know how to say this because it might sound proud. But I noticed, even as a young devotee, if someone mistreated me, often they would have trouble in spiritual life. And I always, I never thought I was anything special. But I'd always noticed that if they, and I'm sure it was true for all devotees, if they mistreated other devotees, they didn't do well. So it's a principle. Here's your guru, please him. He could be up here, 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 here. Krishna sees that you're pleasing the guru. That's what's important. If it's it has to be who's the most advanced guru, then that's going to create havoc in ISKCON. Then pretty soon someone's going to be selling guru meters, and then before you take initiation, you'll go get a reading, put it by their heart. Let's see, are they chanting Hare Krishna silently? A consciousness reader. Let's get a graft and see what's. Are there any forms of the Lord? Leelas in there. That it's not like that. It's like Prabhupada said, just please your temple president and I'm pleased. So who's your temple president? He's just maybe somebody on the same level as you. But Prabhupada wants you to please him, and then you please Prabhupada by pleasing him. So if you please your guru, you're pleasing Prabhupada. Your guru may be here, 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 but that's the principle. See, guru is a person, but it's also a principle. It's the via media representative, Shakshat Hari. So whether it's him or her or you or anyone, when you take that role as guru and the disciple pleases you, it's nothing you're doing, it's just that Krishna is pleased that you're pleasing your guru. Even if your guru's not always pleased because he's in a bad mood today, but Krishna may be pleased that you tried to please him, even he's not pleased. Because he had gone up on the wrong side of the bed. Because he's not up here, he's more down here. So sometimes he's up and down. But if you did the right thing, he told you to do something, you did your best, then he should be pleased. That also works. But generally, he will be pleased. You make a little effort, he will be pleased. And sometimes he's not pleased, but it doesn't mean he's not pleased. He's correcting you. So sometimes the guru corrects you, but it doesn't mean, okay, that means now I'm useless and everything I did is displeasing. No, it's just correcting you. You shouldn't have done it that way. And then as soon as you say, thank you for correcting me, I understand, then he's pleased. And if you try to fight it or make excuses, then he's not pleased. Then you make it worse. So if you're sincerely trying to serve him and you make some mistake and then he explains it and you understand and correct it, that's pleasing the guru. Right? So you can always please him. And you're chanting your rounds nicely, you're pleasing your guru, as Aditi said. You're following the program. You read Prabhupada's books, you're pleasing Prabhupada. Right? You tell someone about Krishna, you're pleasing Prabhupada. Not only that, you're pleasing the whole disciplic succession. Everything you give your guru, he just gives to his guru, who gives to his guru. So he doesn't take it for himself. And if you please your guru, you'll feel it. You'll feel good. You'll feel Krishna conscious. Sakura said there's a song called by James Taylor called "Call Out My Name." Do you know that song? He can't sing it for us. Maybe I know it. Anybody know that song? Can sing it for us? Anyway, that's what Krishna says, call out my name. And Sakuraj is saying, it seems that anartha nivritti is the main bulk of Krishna consciousness. It's actually getting to ruchi. Ruchi is like the top of the mountain. And when you get to ruchi, then it's downhill from there. So yes, anartha nivritti, nishta, clearing all that out, and then you get to ruchi, then the fun begins at ruchi. I just can't wait to get to ruchi. That's where the fun begins. You think you're having fun now, well, you haven't seen anything yet. When you get to ruchi, that's where it really gets fun. Yes.
By the name of service, should we be over enthusiastic or will we wait?
Should we be what?
Over enthusiastic
Over
or
enthu-
we'll wait for very much advice?
Should we be, in other words, you get an idea for service, should you be enthusiastic or should you wait to get an instruction? Is that the question?